We got Ashley Edwards, coastal Mississippi entrepreneur, former president and CEO of the Gulf Coast Business Council, also a SuperTalk Mississippi news column contributor. Ashley, always good to see you, my friend.
Hey, Gerard. Good to be with you today.
Well, let's get started by talking about what happened just a little over a week ago here in the great state of Mississippi. That is, the voters chose their candidates for their various parties that would represent those parties in the general election, with the exception of a handful of legislative races that are progressing to a runoff here in a couple of weeks. But what were your overall thoughts about the results last week?
You know, look, I was a little surprised, frankly, that the lieutenant governor's race wasn't closer than it was. And I think that speaks volumes about a number of things and about the way that voters responded to the way that the campaign had been conducted and sort of the issues and the different positions that each one of the candidates took. I think it was a overwhelming win for Delbert, I think, considering how tough of a race that would look like it was going to be for him. And in the end, he did really well. When you sort of look at that county by county map, the Jackson Metro and the coast really delivered it home for Delbert. It was interesting to see the amount of support that McDaniel had up along the Tennessee state line in DeSoto County and Marshall County and some of those counties. But even in the Pine Belt, where you would have expected McDaniel to come out really strong, he did very good in Jones County, but Forrest and Lamar County went for Delbert. And so really strong showing by Delbert, and I think probably a nod toward the fact that his politics work in Mississippi.
Yeah, I agree, and I know there are a lot of folks that are friends of mine. You have friends as well that supported Senator McDaniel, and the senator I consider to be a friend as well. But this is his third time, right? And it didn't go his way. What's missing? I mean, he's a very capable person. He understands the political landscape. He's an excellent speaker. He has a great presence. We've said many times before when we've had Henry Barber on the program that probably knows as much about this stuff as anybody in the state, honestly, with respect to campaigns and running successful campaigns. The senator can get more done with limited resources, and by that I mean money. I mean, that's public information. He was outgunned by the lieutenant governor virtually 10-1 in terms of financial assets, but still made it a close deal, a relatively close deal, given that amount of money. What's missing, do you think?
You know, Gerard, I've thought a lot about that question, and I think that my general sense is that the negative campaigning that was occurring, the sort of misinformation that was being propagated, even when it was clearly debunked and there was sort of no desire to walk it back on the part of McDaniel's campaign, I think it turns voters off. And, and look, I've been guilty before of saying, hey, negative campaigns happen because they work. They show real results in the way that they move the electorate. But on some level, I think that what you're starting to see, not only in Mississippi, but America as a whole, is just a level of exhaustion with the culture wars, the very negative personal attacks that are occurring, sort of the misinformation. Now, look, I don't think that is across the board within the voters that you see that sort of pushback. But I think what you see for the most part is, folks are worried about the things that they think about around their dinner table. They're worried about their finances. They're worried about the cost of going and getting a mortgage on a new house. They're worried about their access to health care. They're worried about finding a good paying job. And in some cases, I think some of the culture wars just fall a little bit flat in the voters' ears. And Delbert, on the other hand, kind of took that high road, really ran on his leadership, his experience on the issues, on continuing to want to get really pragmatic things done. And I think for the most part, given the fact that he's a guy that people know and people trust across the state, that was enough to kind of get him across. And again, it wasn't a really close race when you really look at the results. I mean, McDaniel had a good showing, no doubt about it. But overall, Delbert was not really in any real danger of losing that race when you consider the turnout and the way these counties failed.
Final tally shows Delbert receiving $195,000. The Senator McDaniel $160,000. Tiffany Longino with no money gets almost $20,000. Right. So 35,000 vote delta on the top there between Delbert and Chris. But Ashley, to get 160,000 of the total 375 ballots cast with very little money. I mean, the amount of money, honestly, and this is not being critical of the senator, but the amount of money that he had to run a statewide campaign was only 2.5x what was spent on some Senate races in the state. I'm talking about state Senate races, a Senate district. And we have 52 of those in the state. It's just amazing that he would get that many, but just can't. And it's fairly consistent if you look at prior elections in which he was a candidate. Just can't seem to get over the hump there with the necessary number to prevail.
Well, I think this is going to be really indicative, Gerard, of a lot of things that we're going to see over the next year. A lot of these Senate races and governor's races across the United States, because you are going to have establishment, incumbent Republicans with folks running to the right of those people. And they're going to have a passionate fan base. They're going to have a passionate voter base that's going to really turn out. They're going to have a lot of momentum on social media. But the question really is, can they win a primary in the current situation that we're seeing in politics? And I think what you're going to see is a lot of folks kind of get close but not be able to get across that finish line. So I think this is very indicative we'll see across the country.
I agree. And my sense is, to get your take on this, Ashley, is that there's kind of a vocal set of folks, both at the state and the national level, that really encourage the vitriol and the personal attacks out of their candidate on others. And then there's, I think, a lot that are silent that are just sick of it. But don't say anything. They're just not the type to go out and say, I'm really sick of all the banter and the personal insults and the mudslinging and the negative campaigning. I wonder if we didn't see a little bit of that manifest with 19,000 people. No disrespect to Ms. Longino, but the fact is she's never run for office before. She had few, if no, resources to run. Really didn't mount any kind of major campaign. I'm not so sure I even saw a sign anywhere in my travels across the state. And pulls out 19,000, almost 20,000 votes. Maybe that's a silent group of people that are saying, I'm just sick of all of it. I'm just going to vote for somebody that I don't think it doesn't represent the other two, is not aligned with the other two, is not like the other two. They haven't earned my vote, honestly. I'm sick of both of them. Might that be happening at the national level, kind of behind the scenes we don't know about?
I think it absolutely is, Gerard. I mean, I think that the situation nationwide right now is so ripe for sort of third candidates to get that kind of support, because folks are just sort of sick of the top two choices. And, the apex of that is the 2024 presidential election. Right. I mean, you're going to have two guys who are likely going to be the nominees of their party for president, neither of whom are going to eclipse 40% approval ratings. That is just unbelievable when you think about that.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. And in watching, turn our attention a little bit to national politics, we've got President Trump being hit with another series of another indictment, another series of charges therein from Fulton County. I talked about that quite a bit yesterday, Ashley, and then I did review in with great more focus the indictment itself. Some of the stuff's crazy. I mean, going after there are 18 other defendants, I believe, besides President Trump. Yet we still got the DA saying, "Yeah, we're gonna get this trial going here in March." I don't see how you can do that with 19 defendants. And you know how that works. They all pull off and start asking for change of venue and to just dismiss them from the case. One of those is Mark Meadows. When we come back on the other side of the break, I'm going to just talk to you about that. And what they're coming after him, what they're charging him with, it's just insane. We got Ashley Edwards, Coastal Mississippi entrepreneur, on middays. We're coming right back.
Absolutely.
We got Ashley Edwards, Coastal Mississippi entrepreneur, on with us on midday. So just looking through, before we went to the break, Ash, went through this latest indictment. And the first thing I will say is I've watched. It's crazy. It's surreal. Primetime television. You got a DA in a county that was just, you could just tell, just relishing the fact that they were on primetime TV across the nation. I couldn't name the DA in Fulton County before then. Most Americans couldn't name the DA in their own county, much less one in another state. But you could just tell this was grandstanding. This was calling attention to herself. Forget whether or not Donald Trump broke the law. That was almost irrelevant. It's just she found a way, with her team to get this thing processed. And all of a sudden, it's like they timed it. So she'd come on at 8 o'clock, at night in the middle of prime time to pronounce it. And I started looking through some of these charges. Like Mark Meadows, you saw this, because he asked somebody for a phone number? Are you kidding me? He wanted to know who's in charge in Georgia or something to that effect. I just want to call him. Like, that's a crime? And Donald Trump, they even said, well, at a rally, he said that the election was stolen. That's a crime? No, that's not a crime. He can say that. You may disagree with him. This is when we start looking like a banana republic. This is what aggravates people. Now, if he legitimately can be proven to have intimidated or somehow abused his presidential power to influence an election, well, that's wrong. I mean, and he ought to be punished, but they're going to have a hell of a time proving that's what happened here.
Look, I think restraint is the word of the day with all of this. And, Gerard, I'm no Trump apologist. I never have been and never will be. I'm probably much more the Christie wing of the Republican Party at this point in my life. Having said that, I think it's very dangerous, some of the lines that we're starting to see being crossed. I mean, when you have political groups conducting political activity, and that's turned into essentially organized crime, and you're criminalizing those things, there may be situations where that is appropriate. There's no question there may be situations where that's appropriate. But to cast these wide nets, sort of all-encompassing, and this should be the scary thing for liberals or folks on the left side of the aisle. Once these precedents are set and once these things start happening, that shoe is always going to be on the other foot at some point.
Exactly right.
And if you already have Donald Trump running what I consider to be on a retribution platform, that essentially it makes up the 80% of his presidential platform at this point is retribution. And half the country believes that their government is at war with them. So if there has ever been a time in American history for the powers that be to use common sense, restraint, pragmatism, and moderation, it's now. And in seeing that indictment come out of Fulton County, none of those words are words I would have used to describe that indictment.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, of course, dragging along Rudy Giuliani and the like, who, honestly, he's really the one that popularized RICO statutes. I mean, there wasn't really much to that until he came along as a U.S. attorney, and now it's being sort of used against him. He's being accused of engaging in RICO and racketeering, and so it's just ironic, I think, to watch that. It seems like all that was planned so as to muck this whole thing up as much as they can. And now you got, again, the DA saying, yeah, we're going to get this thing cranked up like within a week or so of the big March primary. I think that's when we have ours in Mississippi, if I'm not mistaken. That's the big day. This is all contrived. This is planned. What have you been waiting for that? It sure seems like it. I mean, we're 3 years removed from when this happened. It just seems politicized.
It is politicized, and I think that everybody in America needs to just sort of have that let's be real moment to say, are these investigations and these indictments politically motivated? Absolutely they are. No question they're politically motivated.
Sure.
Did Donald Trump do things that he shouldn't have done? I believe absolutely he did. And so there are lots of things that can be true all at one time. These are politically motivated. Would Donald Trump have done everything in his power to overturn what has been proven over and over to be a legally done election? Yes, he absolutely would have. And so all these questions are there. But what we seem to miss in this 24-hour news cycle is the fact that the system worked. The election wasn't overturned. There weren't false electors whose ballots were cast in the halls of Congress. Those
and
things
Trump asked for that
because
he asked for that.
Right. No question.
He asked several states, send a new group of electors, and Mike Pence said, you can't do that. As recent as yesterday, he reaffirmed, did Mike Pence, without really trashing President Trump.
It's the beauty of what the framers did with the way they designed the United States of America. There are checks and balances. State legislatures didn't overturn elections. Courts did not overturn elections. The system worked. And so Trump was not able to do what he ultimately wanted to do. I think any, free-thinking person would say clearly that's what he wanted to accomplish, but he didn't accomplish it. And so at the end of the day, all of that sort of has to be taken in with these indictments and things, which is, he certainly made some attempts to do some things, but Donald Trump is not our president right now.
It's been interesting, has it not, Ashley, that we haven't seen a lot of public reaction, at least, from Republicans in Congress. I've not seen anything too major. Kevin McCarthy may be about it. I mean, his comments were sort of mild, honestly, about the whole indictment thing. Ted Cruz probably been more outspoken, certainly on the Senate side. I've seen nothing out of Mitch McConnell. I haven't seen anything out of Mississippi's delegation either. What do you think about that? What do you make of that?
I will tell you, I think that there are a whole group of national Republican politicians that have sort of a strategy in front of them that says we're going to do everything that we can to cozy up and defend Trump because politically that's what's best for us. I think you have a whole other group of establishment Republicans out there that says, look, Donald Trump is a loser, and even getting into that is going to be a losing effort. And so we're just going to stay away from Trump. But the truth of the matter is, Republican Party can't stay away from Trump. He is likely going to be the Republican nominee for President of the United States. And so, it's something that all these Republicans are going to have to deal with. I almost wonder, Gerard, if the debate next week is going to kind of be the kickoff of really seeing that opposition to Trump solidify and start to take off. But as of right now, Trump is getting everything he wants. That is the only name that's being said on cable news. He is getting 100% of the narrative. Joe Biden yesterday, it was funny. I was flipping through the channels. He was giving a speech somewhere, and CNN went to the first 2 minutes and immediately cut away so they could go back to talking about Donald Trump. So Donald Trump is playing this thing like a fiddle right now. I mean,
it boosts their ratings. They miss him.
they miss him. He was the money maker for all of them across the board. And he knows that, frankly, and that's really, where his genius lies, is the fact that he knows how to be in the middle of the narrative nonstop. And right now, his Republican, primary challengers are out there saying, look, will someone just look our way and say our name once? Because they have no attention on them whatsoever.
It's a little surreal to think we're going to have the first debate of those who qualified for it, and the most qualified in terms of where they are in the polls and their money raising and so forth is Donald Trump, and he's not going to be there at this point. Doesn't look like he's going to show. Something I've noticed, a candidate that I really like a lot is Vivek Ramaswamy. Talked about him on the show quite a bit. He's risen in the polls now. He's doubled where he was 2 months ago. He's up at about 12%. I submit, Ashley, that before this thing's all over with, he will be number two. He will be number two. He's going to pass DeSantis. Christie's, as you know, has also risen up. And even though he said he doesn't want to be Trump's running mate, I bet at the end of the day, he becomes Trump's running mate. And what a ticket that would be, Trump and Ramaswamy.
Right. I think that's exactly where we're headed.
That's where we're headed.
I think that you're going to see DeSantis really attack him on Monday night at the debate.
I agree.
That is where all DeSantis' fire is going to go. He's going to defend Trump, and he's going to attack him.
I agree. Always good talking to you. Ashley Edwards, Coastal Mississippi entrepreneur, also writes columns for SuperTalk Mississippi News. Appreciate it, Ash. Talk to you soon.
Hey, thank you, Gerard. Have a good afternoon.